Hello and welcome to the second video for beginning apps and 2D game development. My name is Ben Geisler. I will be guiding you through the process today of installing and configuring Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 C#, as well as XNA Game Studio, and we will also download an example shooter game and the framework for that and make sure that that's up and running. So go ahead and go to our landing page, please. Open up Google Chrome or Firefox and type in www.uwgb.edu/comp/sci/LOOC. Important web page to remember there, because from there you can get to the login button, and from there you can get to your account login page. So click your account login page, log in, and go to our beginning app and game development course. Please go to the content section, where we have placed a downloading and installing README file that walks you through the process of downloading and installing Visual C# Express 2010 as well as XNA Game Studio 4.0. So the first thing to do is to go to this web page that's on the downloading and installing README. To do that is very easy. All you need to do is go to this page in the content section and just click on this link. So I just clicked on the link there, and I bring up my visualstudio.com/download Visual Studio Express, and what I want to do is I want to click on Visual C# 2010 Express, and I want to say install now. That brings up a little. You will need to click this VCS Web program if you're using Google Chrome. Just say yes to that. That should set up the installer files for Visual C# 2010 Express. Might take a minute or two to actually install. Time to go grab a coffee or energy drink or whatever you need while we wait for this to run the setup file. So there we go. It should pop up the Visual C# 2010 Studio Express, and I'm going to click off on this. I do not wish to send my setup experiences to Microsoft. They don't need that. I'm going to click next. You will have to read the license terms here. This is the Visual Studio 2010 Express version. This is the free version, basically. You will not be asked to pay for this version, but it does have some limitations to it. If you're using Visual Studio 2010, that will work as well. But most of you will probably end up using 2010 Express. That's why we're gearing this tutorial through 2010 Express. So once you've read this, you can click I have read and accept the license terms and click next. Also, you will need, you might need Microsoft Silverlight for some of the features of C# 2010. I'm just going to go ahead and click next on that. You do not need SQL Server 2008 Express Service Pack. We will not be using SQL. Actually, in my case, I've already installed Silverlight, so I'm going to click off on that. And here we have the path for where Visual Studio is going to be located. I'm going to go ahead and click Install. Now, this is actually going to take a little bit just to download, so I'm going to pause for a while. When I come back, you will see it finishing its install. Okay, now we are actually done with setup. We should get this Microsoft Visual C# 2010 has been installed successfully. Once you see that, you know that you have completed that step correctly. So just go ahead and click exit, and you can move on to step 2, which is to install XNA Game Studio 4.0. So for this, what we'll want to do is if you hit right click on the link and just go to open link in new tab, you will go to the XNA Game Studio 4.0 refresh, which has a number of bug fixes from the previous version. So please download this one. And again, this will take a little while, so I'm going to speed up the video while this completes. Okay, we've finished downloading. Now we just double click this to run it. Just say yes there. And we get to the setup for XNA Game Studio. XNA Game Studio is a product that Microsoft has created to basically make game development easy. It was originally created for the Xbox 360, and just read this and then click accept to the license agreement if you agree to it. But it was basically a product created for the Game Developers Club on Xbox 360, and you might want to click yes to enable to go past the firewall so that you can actually communicate with your Xbox 360 in case at some point you want to try to deploy to your Xbox 360, which would actually be possible with the games that we're creating. So you might want to actually say that just to add those additional rules to your firewall. Go ahead and click install. And again, this process is going to take a little while it copies over the files it needs to. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video. And you should see it continue to say status updates, such as copying XNA Game Studio files. As long as it keeps going, you're doing fine. And finally, it should say complete the Microsoft XNA Game Studio Setup Wizard. You can take a look at the AppHub website if you would like to. Basically, what AppHub is, if you just go to, it's going to unfortunately give you the wrong page there, but it should redirect you to the Dev Center. This is currently redirecting us to the Windows Phone Dev Center, which is possible with the new XNA Game Studio as well to deploy to phones. We will cover that later in the course. So for now, you can just click and go to your handy README file for downloading and installing, and you'll see that we have now completed step 2. So the only next thing we have to do is basically download the example shooter project. I'd like you to do that so you can bring up a example game that works. This should download fairly quickly. We'll want to open that file up. This opens up the zipped file, and you will see a shooter folder. You should get another window open. Go down to the start bar, click that open, go to Documents. You should now see a Visual Studio 2010 folder. If you create inside of here a projects directory, that would be a good place to drag the shooter folder over to. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, right-click, drag over to projects, and just say copy here. And that should copy it in. Once it's inside of Libraries, Documents, Visual Studio 2010 Projects, click it open, and you should see an icon. You know that Visual Studio is installed if you see this icon right here. That's a little 10 in the upper right corner of the icon, and the Visual Studio logo down below it. So you know pretty much that that worked. You should be able to click this and open up your game. Select the 2010 Visual C# Express 2010 option here. And that will take a little bit to load because it's loading for the first time. This message can usually just be ignored. It's just telling you to make sure that you're opening the project from a safe source. You can click off on that so it doesn't bug you quite as much. And here's our shooter project. So we've got it open, we've got it working. And if you want to make sure that Visual Studio and XNA Game Studio are working correctly, what you can do is you can go up to debug and say start debug, and this will actually start up a build. So we're already building content here. We're already building the code here in tutorial 2. This might happen to you. Since it's executing shooter.exe, it's going to check that for a virus. It looks like it did not find one, of course, so you can just X out of Avast there. Oops, I had a problem. It looks like, yeah, there we go. Now it's actually running. The first time I exited out of Avast early, and you saw that it gave me a little crash there because it was denied access to run my computer. If that happens to you, you can just go up to debug again and hit start debugging, and you should get this blank yellow screen, and you know that things have worked because of that. By the way, this is the Solution Explorer for Shooter. We will go through this in great detail later, but for now, this is where all the code files are, for example. Also, this is where all the content files are. For example, that's the PNG that's going to be used. Here's an explosion PNG that's going to be used. Here's a main menu that we're going to use called Shooter. Here's a mine icon. So everything is pretty much here and working. You might want to configure this such that when you're building, you actually get, let me see if I can get this configured here. If I hit debug build solution, I see build progress down below. So that way you actually know that it worked. And now I've got some. Oh, by the way, if you get this error message, this will come up occasionally when you're working with C#. What's actually happened here is I ran this program as a debug program earlier, and I X'd out of it, I quit it, but it is still running somewhere on the system. So I'm getting an error message in compiling here, and it says could not copy shooter.exe to bin x86 debug shooter.exe. This is a typical message you're going to get when basically it's trying to create shooter.exe, but shooter.exe is already being accessed by another program, another process. So what you need to do is you need to hit Control-Alt-Delete, bring up your task manager, and look for the image name. Go under Processes. You can sort this by image name by clicking on the word image name. You should look for shooter.exe. Click that and click End Process. Let's say yes to this, End Process. I've ended it now, and now I should be able to. And what I did before, by the way, is I just went to game1.cs, clicked on it, and I just insert a blank line here, and I just go to debug, and I just say build solution just to make sure that the solution actually builds correctly, and that way I know that everything inside of XNA Game Studio is actually working. So right now it's building. You can see it's got its building progress all set. Okay, I'm going to hit build again because I think it hadn't killed that process quite yet when we started, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to debug and build solution again. And now I in fact do get build succeeded, so I know that it worked. And I have no errors in my error list down here, so everything is good to go. I've got Visual Studio 2010 set up. I'm going to go through the details of what all this does later, but you can, if you want, start going through it. It's game1.cs, and it kind of goes through, talks about the initialization function, the load content function where we're loading up sprites, and the update loop where it's looking for the gamepad, for example. We'll get to all of this later. But basically now you know that your shooter is working, so you can quit out of this or leave it open if you want. And that basically, I believe, brings us to the end of our README file. Let's double check that. Just going to go back to our little README. And yes, we have extracted the shooter example, we've run it, and we see that it works. So we're all set to go. Thanks for following along, and we will see you next time in part 3. Part 3, third video for beginning app and 2D game development In that video, we will be covering the basics of how to create a Hello World game app. All right, see you next time.